They say the devil is in the details, but sometimes a single detail can unravel an entire life. On the surface, Jennifer and David Hartley had it all. The mansion in the suburbs, the luxury cars, the beautiful children, the successful businesses. They were the couple everyone envied, until one tiny inconsistency in Jennifer's story led investigators down a rabbit hole that would expose one of the most twisted schemes in modern criminal history. This is the story of how a perfect life was built on lies, deception, and murder, and how one detective's refusal to let go of a single detail brought it all crashing down. What you're about to hear is shocking, it's disturbing, and every word of it is true. Welcome to Sinister Secrets, Westfield, Connecticut, a wealthy enclave where the average home costs over $2 million, where Teslas and Range Rovers line the driveways, where success isn't just achieved, it's displayed. In 2019, no one embodied that success more than Jennifer and David Hartley. Jennifer Hartley, 38 years old, was the founder and CEO of LuxLife Consulting, a boutique marketing firm that specialized in luxury brands. She built the company from scratch in 2012, and by 2019, it was generating over $5 million in annual revenue. David Hartley, 42, was a prominent investment banker at Sterling & Company, one of the top firms in New York City. He made the hour-long commute to Manhattan every day, leaving before dawn and returning after dark. Together, they had 2 children, Emma, age 9, and Lucas, age 7. The family lived in a 7,000-square-foot colonial mansion on 3 acres of pristine Connecticut real estate. To their neighbors, the Hartleys were the golden couple. Jennifer hosted charity galas. David coached Little League. They threw lavish parties. They vacationed in the Hamptons. They had it all. But behind the perfectly manicured facade, something was very, very wrong. Let's go back to March 2019. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Jennifer was preparing for a major client presentation. David was closing a big deal at work. The kids were thriving in their private school. But on March 18th, 2019, David Hartley didn't come home from work. At first, Jennifer wasn't concerned. David sometimes stayed late at the office, especially when closing deals. But when he didn't answer his phone by 10 p.m., she started to worry. By midnight, she called the police. "My husband went to work this morning and never came home," she told the dispatcher, her voice shaking. "This isn't like him. Something's wrong." The Westfield Police Department took the report seriously. David Hartley was a respected member of the community. His disappearance was unusual. But what they discovered in the next 48 hours would shock everyone. Detectives started by retracing David's movements. Security footage from Sterling and Company showed David entering the building at 7:42 a.m. on March 18th. He attended meetings throughout the morning. At 12:47 p.m., he left for lunch alone. And that's where the trail went cold. David's credit cards hadn't been used. His phone was off. His car, a black BMW 7 Series, was nowhere to be found. It was as if David Hartley had simply vanished. The investigation intensified. Detectives interviewed David's co-workers, his friends, his family. Everyone said the same thing. David was devoted to his family. He had no enemies. He had no reason to disappear. But one person caught Detective Sarah Chen's attention. David's assistant, a 26-year-old woman named Amanda Price. Amanda had worked for David for 2 years. She was efficient, professional, and by all accounts, excellent at her job. But when Detective Chen interviewed her on March 20th, something seemed off. Amanda was nervous. She avoided eye contact. And when asked about David's state of mind in the days leading up to his disappearance, she hesitated before answering. "He seemed stressed," Amanda finally said. "But I think it was just work stuff." Detective Chen made a note. "Follow up with Amanda Price. On March 21st, 3 days after David vanished, Jennifer Hartley held a press conference. She stood in front of her mansion, flanked by her 2 children, and made a tearful plea. "David, if you can hear this, please come home," she said, her voice breaking. "We love you. We need you. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it together." The local news covered the story extensively. Missing investment banker, devoted father, no clues. The community rallied around Jennifer and the children. But Detective Chen noticed something during that press conference. Something small. Something that didn't quite add up. When Jennifer talked about David, she kept saying, "I love you," and "We love you." But she never once said, "I miss you." It was a tiny detail. Most people wouldn't have noticed it. But to Detective Chen, it felt wrong. And that tiny detail would change everything. On March 23rd, 5 days after David's disappearance, a hiker in the woods near Westfield made a grim discovery. A black BMW 7 Series, partially hidden by brush, about 2 miles off Route 7. The license plate matched David Hartley's car. The vehicle was unlocked. The keys were still in the ignition. And inside, investigators found David's wallet, his phone, and his wedding ring. But no David. The forensics team processed the car for hours. What they found was disturbing. Blood. Not much. Just a few drops on the driver's seat and steering wheel. But it was definitely blood. And DNA testing would later confirm it belonged to David Hartley. There were also signs of a struggle. The driver's side window was cracked. The rearview mirror was askew. And on the passenger seat, investigators found a woman's earring. Small, silver, expensive. Jennifer Hartley was asked to identify the earring. She looked at it carefully and shook her head. "I've never seen that before," she said. "It's not mine." Detective Chen noted her response because there was something about the way Jennifer answered, too quickly, too confidently, that felt rehearsed. The investigation took a darker turn. David's phone records revealed something Jennifer hadn't mentioned. In the 2 weeks before his disappearance, David had made over 30 calls to a number registered to Amanda Price, his assistant. Most of the calls were short, under 2 minutes. But several calls, made late at night, lasted over an hour. When confronted, Jennifer claimed she knew nothing about the calls. "David worked closely with Amanda," Jennifer explained. "I'm sure it was work-related." But Detective Chen wasn't convinced. She obtained a warrant for Amanda's phone records, and what she found was explosive. David and Amanda had been having an affair. Text messages between them revealed a relationship that had been going on for over a year. The messages were intimate, romantic, and in some cases explicit. But more importantly, the messages revealed that David had been planning to leave Jennifer. "I can't keep living this lie," David had texted Amanda on March 15th, just 3 days before he disappeared. "I'm going to tell her this weekend. Then we can finally be together." Amanda had responded, "Are you sure? What about the kids?" David's reply, "I'll figure it out. I love you. This is what I want." But David never got the chance to tell Jennifer, because on March 18th, he vanished. With this new information, Detective Chen brought Jennifer in for another interview. This time, the questions were more pointed. "Did you know your husband was having an affair?" Chen asked. Jennifer's expression didn't change. "No," she said calmly. "I had no idea. David was planning to leave you. Did you know that?" "No. Were you on March 18th between noon and 2 p.m.? Jennifer paused, just for a second, but it was enough for Chen to notice. "I was at home," Jennifer said, "working from my home office. I had client calls all afternoon." "Can anyone verify that?" "The kids were at school. My housekeeper doesn't work Mondays. So no one can verify it. But that's where I was." Detective Chen made another note. "Check Jennifer's alibi." The investigation into Jennifer Hartley's alibi revealed cracks immediately. Jennifer claimed she had client calls all afternoon on March 18th, but when detectives contacted those clients, none of them confirmed having calls with Jennifer that day. Jennifer's cell phone record showed her phone was at her home address from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., but her car, a white Mercedes SUV, was captured on traffic cameras heading toward Route 7 at 12:52 p.m., the same road where David's car was later found. When confronted with this evidence, Jennifer changed her story. "Oh, right," she said, as if suddenly remembering. "I'd a drive out that way. I needed to clear my head. I've been so stressed with David missing." But David wasn't missing yet, Detective Chen pointed out. "This was before you reported him missing." Jennifer blinked. I must have gotten the days confused." On March 28th, 10 days after David disappeared, search and rescue teams found his body. He was buried in a shallow grave about a mile from where his car had been discovered. The cause of death: blunt force trauma to the head. The medical examiner estimated he'd been dead for approximately 10 days, meaning he was killed shortly after he disappeared. David Hartley had been murdered, and all eyes turned to Jennifer. With David's body recovered, the investigation shifted into high gear. This was now a homicide case, and Jennifer Hartley was the prime suspect. But Detective Chen knew that suspicion wasn't enough. She needed evidence. She needed proof. She needed to build an airtight case. And that's when she started digging into Jennifer's finances. What she found was staggering. Jennifer Hartley's successful marketing firm, it was hemorrhaging money. Lux Life Consulting, which Jennifer claimed was generating $5 million a year, was actually on the verge of bankruptcy. The company had lost its 3 biggest clients in the past year. Revenue had plummeted, and Jennifer had been using her personal savings and David's income to keep the business afloat. But there was more. Jennifer had taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on David just 6 months before his death. When questioned about it, Jennifer claimed it was David's idea. "We wanted to make sure the kids would be taken care of if something happened to either of us," she explained. But the insurance agent told a different story. According to him, Jennifer had initiated the policy. David had been hesitant, but ultimately signed the paperwork after Jennifer insisted. The noose was tightening. Detective Chen also discovered something else. Jennifer had been researching divorce law. Her internet search history, obtained through a warrant, revealed dozens of searches in the weeks leading up to David's death. How is property divided in a Connecticut divorce? Does the wife get half of everything in divorce? Can a wife lose custody of children in divorce? How to protect assets during divorce? And most damning of all, searched just 2 days before David's disappearance. Can life insurance be paid out if spouse dies before divorce? But Jennifer still had an explanation for everything. The searches? She'd suspected David was having an affair and wanted to know her options. The life insurance? Just responsible financial planning. The lies about her whereabouts? Confusion and stress from David's disappearance. Detective Chen needed something more. She needed a confession, or she needed physical evidence tying Jennifer to the murder. And then, on April 2nd, she got a break. Forensic analysts had been processing David's car for weeks, and buried in the fabric of the passenger seat, they found a single strand of hair. It was long, blonde, and dyed. DNA testing confirmed it belonged to Jennifer Hartley. Jennifer's explanation? She'd been in David's car plenty of times. Of course her hair would be there. But there was something else about that hair that made it significant. It had been treated with a specific hair dye, a high-end salon brand called Chromolux. And according to Jennifer's hairstylist, Jennifer had only started using Chromolux in January 2019, just 2 months before David's death. The hair in David's car was fresh. It hadn't been there long, but the smoking gun came from the earring. Remember that silver earring found in David's car? Jennifer had claimed it wasn't hers, but investigators had been thorough. They'd gone through every photo on Jennifer's social media accounts, looking for jewelry matches. And in a photo from Valentine's Day 2019, just 1 month before David's death, Jennifer was wearing those exact earrings. When confronted with the photo, Jennifer's face went pale. I forgot I had those," she stammered. "They must have fallen out in David's car at some point." "But you said you'd never seen that earring before," Detective Chen reminded her. Jennifer had no answer. On April 5th, 2019, Jennifer Hartley was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of her husband, David Hartley. She maintained her innocence. She hired the best defense lawyers money could buy, and she prepared for the fight of her life. But the evidence against her was overwhelming. The lies, the financial motive, the life insurance policy, the internet searches, the physical evidence in David's car. And then there was the detail that started it all. The detail that Detective Chen had noticed during Jennifer's press conference. Jennifer had never said, "I miss you," when talking about David. She'd only said, "I love you." Because you can't miss someone when you know exactly where they are. The trial of Jennifer Hartley began in October 2019, 7 months after David's death. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They painted a picture of a woman whose perfect life was crumbling. Her business was failing. Her husband was having an affair, and she was about to lose everything in a divorce. So she killed him. The timeline, according to prosecutors, went like this. On March 18th, Jennifer lured David to a remote location under the pretense of talking about their marriage. She'd known about the affair. Maybe not every detail, but she'd suspected. And she wanted to confront him away from the children. They met on Route 7, in a secluded area. They argued. And when David told Jennifer he was leaving her for Amanda, Jennifer snapped. She struck him with a heavy object, possibly a tire iron from her own car. David fought back, cracking his car window in the struggle. But Jennifer was in a rage. She hit him again, and again, until he stopped moving. Then, in a state of panic and adrenaline, Jennifer dragged David's body into the woods and buried him. She cleaned up the blood as best she could, left his car hidden in the brush, and drove home. Later that night, she called the police to report him missing, playing the role of the worried wife to perfection. The defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial. Yes, Jennifer had lied about some things. Yes, she'd been in David's car. But that didn't make her a murderer. They presented an alternative theory. David had been killed by Amanda Price, the mistress, who was jealous and unhinged. The affair had gone sour. Amanda had lured David to that location and killed him in a fit of rage. But there was a problem with that theory. Amanda had an airtight alibi. On March 18th, she'd been in New York City at a company conference, surrounded by witnesses all day long. The defense also argued that there was no murder weapon, no forensic evidence directly linking Jennifer to the act of killing David, no witnesses. But the prosecution had something else. They had Jennifer's own words. During the investigation, Jennifer had agreed to let police search her home computer. She'd been confident there was nothing incriminating. She was wrong. Buried in her deleted files, forensic analysts found a document Jennifer had written 3 weeks before David's death. It was titled Freedom Plan. In it, Jennifer had outlined her options. Jennifer Hartley had written her own confession months before she murdered her husband. When the document was presented in court, the defense had no response. Jennifer buried her face in her hands. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. On November 14th, 2019, Jennifer Hartley was found guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As she was let out of the courtroom in handcuffs, Jennifer finally broke down. The perfect facade crumbled. She sobbed uncontrollably, crying out for her children. But it was too late. The perfect life she'd killed to protect was gone forever. Today, Jennifer Hartley sits in a maximum security women's prison in Connecticut. She's appealed her conviction twice. Both appeals have been denied. Emma and Lucas Hartley, now teenagers, live with David's parents in Massachusetts. They've been in therapy since their mother's arrest. They rarely speak about what happened. Amanda Price, David's former mistress, left Sterling and company shortly after the trial. She moved across the country and changed her name. She wanted nothing to do with the case that destroyed so many lives. And Detective Sarah Chen? She retired in 2023, but she still thinks about the Hartley case. Specifically, she thinks about that one detail, the missing "I miss you" during Jennifer's press conference. "I almost let it go," Chen said in a recent interview. "It was such a small thing, but something in my gut told me to pay attention, and that one detail led us to everything else." The case of Jennifer Hartley is a reminder that no life is as perfect as it seems. Behind the mansion, the luxury cars, the Instagram photos, there can be darkness, desperation, lies, and sometimes the most dangerous person is the one who has everything to lose. Jennifer Hartley thought she could get away with murder. She thought she could play the grieving widow, collect a life insurance, and continue living her perfect life. But one detail, one tiny, overlooked detail, brought her entire world crashing down. Because in the end, the devil really is in the details. In the weeks following Jennifer Hartley's arrest, Westfield began to change. The same neighbors who once waved from manicured driveways now avoided eye contact. Curtains stayed drawn longer. Conversations lowered when police cars passed. The illusion of safety, the belief that monsters lived somewhere else, had been shattered. Detective Sarah Chen felt it every time she drove through the neighborhood. "This wasn't supposed to happen here," one resident told her quietly. "But it always does," Chen replied. Jennifer Hartley sat in a holding cell at Westfield Police Headquarters, wearing a gray jumpsuit, her hair pulled back in a loose, careless ponytail. Gone were the tailored dresses. Gone was the flawless makeup. Gone was the woman who once commanded rooms. But even now, Jennifer believed she was the smartest person in the room. During early interrogations, she oscillated between calm confidence and controlled emotion. She cried when discussing her children. She expressed disbelief at the accusations. She spoke often about how much she loved David. What she never spoke about was missing him. When detectives confronted her with inconsistencies, traffic footage, client call discrepancies, the affair, Jennifer didn't panic. She adapted. She always had. She reframed facts. She minimized details. She corrected investigators on trivial points, as if precision could replace truth. But Detective Chen had seen this before. People who lie well don't rely on emotion. They rely on control. And Jennifer was losing hers. Emma and Lucas Hartley were removed from the home the same night Jennifer was arrested. They asked one question over and over: "Where's Daddy?" No one had an answer they could understand. Child psychologists later testified that both children showed signs of acute trauma: night terrors, separation anxiety, emotional withdrawal. Emma stopped speaking in full sentences for weeks. Lucas refused to sleep unless the lights were on. The house they once called home became evidence. Every room photographed, every surface cataloged, every memory frozen in time. National media descended on Westfield. CEO mom accused of murdering husband. Perfect marriage hides deadly secret. Affair, insurance, and a shallow grave. Jennifer's image was everywhere. Split screens contrasting her polished press conference with her mugshot. Public opinion turned swiftly, but Jennifer still believed a jury would understand her. She told her attorneys the same thing again and again: "They don't know what it's like to be me." Court-appointed forensic psychologists evaluated Jennifer in the months leading up to trial. Their conclusions were chilling. Jennifer exhibited extreme narcissistic traits, obsessive fear of loss of status, emotional detachment when discussing David's death, heightened concern for public perception over moral consequence. One evaluator wrote, "Jennifer Hartley does not experience guilt in a conventional sense. She experiences threat to identity, to image, to control." To Jennifer, David's affair wasn't betrayal. It was exposure, and exposure was intolerable. As the trial approached, Detective Chen reviewed the case one final time. Thousands of pages, hundreds of photos, dozens of interviews, but her mind kept returning to that moment on the front lawn. Jennifer, the children, the microphones. "I love you. We love you. Never I miss you." Because grief improvises. Liars rehearse. That single detail, so small it barely registered, had cracked the entire case open. By the time opening arguments began, Jennifer Hartley's fate was already sealed. Not by one piece of evidence, not by one lie, but by accumulation, by patterns, by the quiet certainty that some people, when faced with losing everything, will choose the unthinkable. And as the courtroom doors closed, one truth became impossible to ignore. Jennifer Hartley didn't kill her husband in a moment of rage. She killed him to preserve a life that was already dead. Thank you for watching Sinister Secrets. If this case has affected you, or if you know someone in a dangerous domestic situation, please reach out for help. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7 at 1-800-799-7233. Remember, if something feels wrong, trust your instincts. And if you see something, say something. Stay safe out there. And remember, no one's life is as perfect as it seems. Until next time.